Scanning the future.
Hey, welcome to Future Files. I'm Andy MacNeil. He's Nick Martin. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about a Stanley Cup future that we like in both the Western Conference and the Eastern Conference. Let's start in the West, Nick, because I think this one is a little bit more intriguing than our Eastern Conference pick. The LA Kings, currently at Pinnacle, almost 28-1 for the Kings to win the Stanley Cup this season. And while it might seem like a you know, bit of a far-fetched take. I mean, I think this number is pretty attractive. The LA Kings have been among the best teams this season in several metrics, particularly at 5-on-5. Just over the last month or so, I mean, they rank third in expected goals percentage at 5-on-5, fourth in shot attempt percentage, and they've got the fourth best goal share at 5-on-5. And as we talked about on the puck portfolio today, Darcy Kemper has been really good for the Kings this season. That's something they really haven't had in the past, is a goaltender that actually gives them a lift. And so far, he ranks third in save percentage among goaltenders that have faced at least 1,500 unblocked shot attempts. And he ranks sixth, in goals saved above expected.
Yeah, I think the Kings are definitely a better team this year than the last few years when they've gone out early to the Oilers. They're still going to have to beat them in round one. I think me and you are both fully aware that they'll still be worthy of being underdogs in that series. But I think they're much closer this year than they have been in years past. I think their offensive upside looks a lot better. Byfield and Fiala are really powering that second unit to much better results. And you talked about it. This is the first year where they've really had a goalie. They've kind of been an analytical darling the last three seasons. They've always been excellent defensively, but they've always been playing in front of more or less pretty bad starters. So now they have a guy who is capable of winning games on his own, but is also still being insulated by elite defensive play. And I really think the only knock on them, their power play hasn't been great once again, which has been one of the biggest flaws and one of the reasons they can't get by the Oilers in the last couple of years. But I really think they're only as flawed as a lot of the other teams out there. And I think that they don't deserve to be this big of an underdog. And I also think it's worth noting how much better the defense score is this year. They're using Jordan Spence a little more, who's a guy I really like, who's come a long way. And Brent Clark has also been more or less pretty good addition this season. So I think there's a lot to like about the Kings. I think we kind of haven't even maybe scratched the surface of their peak. They've only had Doughty back for a little bit here. He's starting to play really well. So yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons that the Kings are going to be a really tough out this postseason. Don't love that round one matchup, but I think this number is still way too long. And if they do get past the Oilers, I think they're very capable of beating anyone. So I think it's out of the teams coming far down the board, I think they're by a wide margin the most complete.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, especially at that 20 almost 28-1 price. They currently have a 2-point lead over the Oilers in the Pacific Division standings, so they would have home ice advantage if the playoffs started tomorrow. They've also got a game in hand on Edmonton, so they're in a pretty good position here to acquire home ice advantage heading into this matchup. And of course, like you mentioned, the Oilers have defeated the Kings in 3 consecutive postseasons in the first round. It took them 7 games the first year, 6 games the next, and 5 games last year. But I think we could see a bit of a regression in terms of Edmonton's ability to get past this team in round one. Certainly not feeling like as much of a lock as it has been in the last few years. I mean, the Oilers, they're obviously dealing with injuries. We think that'll be sorted out before the postseason, but goaltending has been an issue this year, much more than it has been in the past. And I think that the Oilers, I mean, while their offense has looked a lot better lately, they have struggled at times when Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl aren't going at 100%, which is been pretty rare for Draisaitl, who has had arguably the best season in the NHL this year. But we've seen them, struggle to score goals at times this season, and that has been a bit of a surprise. But the Kings at currently, like I said, almost 28 to 1 here at on Pinnacle Sports right now is probably the best bet in the Western Conference as far as the Stanley Cup long shot. You like a team in the Eastern Conference, maybe a little bit more of an obvious choice, I guess, but still a pretty good number nonetheless.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of an obvious one, but I also don't think that many people are really touting the Hurricanes right now. I think at least out of the mainstream media, everyone was kind of just like, they supposedly came out on the wrong end of this whole Rantanen thing and kind of written them off. Some of the other teams in the East, like the Panthers and Lightning, made some really good moves. But you look at the betting prices. When Carolina had Rantanen, they got as low as plus 550 to win the cup. And clearly that was probably just always too short. But I think them now being 12 to 1 is an over adjustment because since Rantanen's left, they've been one of the most dominant teams in the entire league. We've seen them have one of the top underlying profiles basically the entire Rod Brind'Amour era. But I think this year's team is equally good. Really, the only knock on them compared to previous years is Brent Burns has fallen off pretty badly. But I think other than that, they've been closer to breaking through in the playoffs than I think people kind of seem to realize. I do kind of side with Brind'Amour in saying that, the 4-game conference final loss to the Panthers was criminally unlucky. And I think this team's kind of right there if they get some better breaks in the playoffs. And I think some of their guys are trending in the right direction in terms of their career arcs as well. Aho's been better. If anything, Jarvis has been unreal. And Taylor Hall's really been excellent since they've picked him up. So I think there's a lot to like about the Hurricanes. They ranked second in expected goal share in the month of March. They've been winning a ton of games, and they've got a great bracket. I think arguably they have the best bracket out of any of the true contenders. They are pretty much locked in to play the Devils in round one, which really, like I said, I think out of the true contenders, I don't know if anyone's getting much of a better break than that. Even the Jets versus the Blues in round one is arguably a tougher matchup now. And then I think as much as I'm a Caps fan, and I think this team's maybe less of a fraud than people think, I don't think that matchup in round two is overly bad at all, if that is the matchup they get. So, yeah, I think Carolina's flying really under the radar here. I feel like this team's been close the last couple of years. This is arguably their best team that they've had during the Brind'Amour era. And, yeah, bracket's breaking pretty good for them. So I think the 12 to 1s that are out there are a little too long. I'm happy to go back to this well again, even though they've burned me in the futures market a few times in recent years.
Yeah, they've burned a lot of us. I mean, like you said, they've been an analytics darling for a long time, and they are once again this season, as you mentioned, since the trade deadline. They have posted the third best expected goal share at 5-on-5, the top shot attempt percentage at 5-on-5, and they are fifth in goal share at 5-on-5. They've been really good offensively at 5-on-5 as well, 3.21 goals per 60 minutes since the trade deadline. And of course, they still remain one of the best defensive teams in the NHL. So, yeah, I can't really argue with the Hurricanes at 12 to 1 to win the
Yeah, and
Stanley
the
Cup.
The only other note too that I do think is worth touching on, we haven't seen the Panthers at full strength lately. They're still without Matt Kachuk, but obviously they're the most important talking point in the East. I mean, they're the betting favorite. I think everyone rightfully views them as the favorite. They've got all the pieces from the Cup team there. But Seth Jones has been horrific in his early going with the Panthers, and it's led to some bad results. It's not just the underlying results. They're getting outscored with him on the ice. They're losing more games than they were earlier on. So I think if he's going to be this bad, and they're kind of obviously committed to that for the season now, that could mean the Panthers are a little overvalued as well. So I think that if the Panthers are a little less dominant than we're expecting, that also should open the door a little more for the Hurricanes.
Yeah, great point. But that does it for today's episode of Future Files. Be sure to check out Thursday's episode of the Puck Portfolio here on the DFO Fantasy and Betting YouTube channel to get all of our picks for Thursday night's slate and maybe even a pick for Friday as well. But we will see you next week when the Puck Portfolio returns on Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time right here on the DFO Fantasy and Betting YouTube channel. Until then, good luck with your bets and gamble responsibly.